The flashing blue and red lights behind me came out of nowhere, slicing through the quiet Portland evening and stopping me dead in my tracks. 1 minute I was thinking about dinner and the next day's work schedule, and the next minute my heart was pounding like I'd actually done something wrong. I pulled one earbud out and turned around just as a police cruiser rolled to a stop at the curb. The driver's door opened, and a police officer stepped out, tall and confident, her boots hitting the pavement with purpose. My name's Brian Mason. I'm 26 years old, and I run a small contracting crew on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. Most days start early and end late. I grab an egg sandwich from a gas station in the morning, spend hours surrounded by sawdust and noise, and come home sore and tired. My apartment is small, quiet, and empty, except for my lazy cat Whiskers, who acts like he pays the rent. I'm not married. I haven't dated seriously in years. Life's been predictable, and honestly, I thought I was fine with that. That night, I was walking home from a long shift downtown. My boots were muddy, my back ached, and all I wanted was a cold beer and my couch. The neighborhood was calm, old trees lining the sidewalks, porch lights flickering on as the sun dipped lower. Then the cruiser showed up, and suddenly my normal life felt anything but normal. The officer walked toward me with a steady, practiced stride, one hand resting near her belt. She had blonde hair pulled back into a tight ponytail and sharp features softened by striking gray-blue eyes. She looked serious, but not angry. Still, my pulse picked up. "Stop right there," she said. "I need to check you out." I lifted my hand slightly without thinking. Okay, what's going on?" "You match the description of a suspect involved in recent thefts," she said. "Mind if I pat you down?" I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Go ahead, I've got nothing on me but work stuff." She checked my pockets, asked for my ID, and went through my backpack. Inside was my hard hat, a half-eaten sandwich, and a few tools. She glanced at my dirty jeans and boots. "You work construction?" "Yeah," I said. "I run a small crew, was on a job site all day." She radioed my information in, her eyes flicking between me and the cruiser. The seconds felt longer than they probably were. Finally, the radio crackled back. The suspect was taller, wearing a hoodie. Not me. She let out a breath and handed my ID back. "Sorry about that. We've had a string of package thefts around here. Description was close." I shrugged. "No worries. So I'm free to go?" Quote. For the first time, she smiled. Just a little. But it changed everything. She suddenly didn't look like someone questioning a suspect. She looked like someone you'd talk to over coffee. "You're good," she said. Then, almost casually, she added, "You're not married, right?" I blinked. "What?" "Are you married?" she repeated, watching my face closely. "No," I said, confused. "Single." "Why?" She held my gaze for a moment, then reached for a small notepad. "Give me your number. I owe you a coffee for the mix-up." I stood there, stunned. A cop had just pulled me over, searched my bag, and now she was asking for my number. "So this is official police business?" I asked with a grin. "Easier to track me next time?" She laughed softly, writing my number down. "Something like that. Stay out of trouble, Brian." Then she got back into her cruiser and drove off, leaving me standing there with my thoughts racing. I walked the rest of the way home in a daze. Whiskers barely got my attention when I came in. I grabbed a beer and sat on the couch, replaying the moment over and over. Her eyes, that smile. The question about marriage, it didn't feel random. The next day dragged. I checked my phone more times than I'd ever admit. By afternoon, I figured it meant nothing. Just a polite gesture. Then my phone buzzed. Saturday, 10 a.m. Harbor Cafe. I'll cover the coffee. Rosa Martinez. My heart jumped. Rosa. The name fit her perfectly. Strong and confident. I typed back that I'd be there and set my phone down, smiling like an idiot. For the first time in a long time, my predictable life didn't feel so predictable anymore. And I had no idea that this one mistaken stop was about to change everything. Saturday morning came faster than I expected. I woke up before my alarm, the soft gray Portland light slipping through the blinds. Whiskers was curled at the foot of the bed, completely unaware that his owner was suddenly nervous about coffee. I lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night over and over. Her voice, the way she asked if I was married like it mattered, the way she smiled when she took my number. I got up and actually put effort into getting ready, which felt strange. I shaved off a few days of stubble, pulled on a clean gray button-down instead of my usual work shirt, and stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I looked like the same guy, but my stomach was tight with anticipation. I skipped breakfast and headed out on foot, needing the walk to calm my thoughts. Harbor Cafe sat along the river, tucked away and cozy. The smell of coffee and pastries hit me the moment I stepped inside. I got there early, ordered a cappuccino, and took a seat by the window, where I could see the water moving slowly outside. My leg bounced under the table as I checked the time. 9:55. At 9:57, the bell above the door rang. I looked up, and there she was. Rosa looked completely different without the uniform. Her blonde hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and she wore a simple blue dress with a light cardigan. No badge, no belt, just her. When her eyes found mine, her face lit up in a way that made my chest tighten. "You're early," she said as she walked over, smiling. "Didn't want to give you a reason to pull me over again," I said, standing and pulling out her chair. She laughed as she sat down, ordering a latte. Without the uniform, she seemed more relaxed, younger somehow. But those gray-blue eyes were the same, warm and attentive. We started with small talk. She apologized again about the stop, explaining the thefts in the area. I told her about my job, about long days and tight deadlines. She listened closely, like she actually cared, not just waiting for her turn to talk. Before long, the conversation shifted naturally. She told me stories from patrol, the strange calls, the funny ones, the exhausting ones. I shared stories from job sites, mistakes made by new hires, jobs that went sideways. We laughed more than I expected. At one point, she stirred her coffee slowly and said, "Some days, I come home and there's no one to talk to, no one to ask how my shift was." I nodded. "Yeah, I know that feeling." She looked up at me then, really looked at me, and something quiet passed between us. The cafe noise faded into the background. "You don't mind that I'm older?" she asked suddenly. "And a cop?" I smiled. "You don't seem old. And the cop part just makes things interesting." She laughed, but there was something guarded in her eyes. Still, when we stood outside afterward, the river breeze brushing past us, she said, "Next time, my treat again." Walking home, I felt lighter than I had in years. It wasn't just attraction, it felt like connection. Like something I hadn't realized I was missing. Over the next week, we texted. Nothing intense at first. Short messages, check-ins. She'd tell me about a rough shift. I'd send a photo of a messy job site and joke about needing backup. It felt easy, comfortable. Then she asked me to dinner. Friday night, downtown, pizza place. Her treat. The place was small and warm, red checkered tablecloths and dim lights. She showed up in jeans and a black shirt, confident and effortless. Dinner was filled with laughter, music debates, movie arguments, sports trash talk. I noticed how relaxed she seemed, how her shoulders dropped as the night went on. When we walked outside, a light rain had started. She asked if I wanted to walk with her. We shared my umbrella, our shoulders brushing now and then. That's when she told me about her past. She'd been married once. Years ago. Her husband had been a firefighter. He died in a warehouse fire. She spoke quietly, eyes fixed on the wet pavement. "I stopped letting people in after that," she said. "I thought love was done for me." I didn't know what to say, so I took her hand. She didn't pull away. "I'm sorry," I said softly. She squeezed my fingers. "Talking to you feels different, like maybe I can breathe again." We stopped under a streetlight, rain falling around us. She looked at me with uncertainty and hope tangled together. "You don't mind that I'm complicated?" she asked. I shook my head. "I'd mind if you didn't give me a chance." She smiled, small but real, and brushed her hand against mine before we parted ways. That night, sleep didn't come easily. I kept thinking about her words, her loss, her strength, and the feeling that this wasn't just a date. It was the start of something neither of us had planned for. The days after that walk in the rain felt different, lighter, but heavier at the same time. Rosa and I texted more, not constantly, but enough that I found myself smiling at my phone during work. A quick good morning from her before roll call. A message from me during lunch, asking how her shift was going. It slipped into my routine so easily that it felt natural, like it had always been there. We started seeing each other regularly, quiet dinners at small places she liked, long drives with music playing low, weekend walks where we talked about everything and nothing. With me, she laughed more. With her, I felt calmer. But I could tell she was holding something back. There was always a pause when the conversation drifted toward the future, like she was afraid to step too far forward. One evening, she finally said it out loud. We were sitting in her living room, takeout boxes on the coffee table, the TV playing quietly in the background. "People at the station are starting to notice," she said, not looking at me. "Questions, looks, comments." I leaned closer. "Does that bother you?" She sighed. "Not for me, for you. I don't want you caught in the middle of rumors." I took her hand. "I don't care what anyone says. I care about you." She nodded, but the worry didn't fully leave her eyes. A few days later, it almost ended. She called me late one night, her voice tight. "Maybe we should slow down, just for now." I didn't argue on the phone. I drove straight to her place. She opened the door wearing sweats, her eyes tired and red. "I'm not walking away," I said as soon as I stepped inside. "Not because of fear, not because of gossip." She shook her head. "You don't understand how heavy this gets." "I do," I said gently, "and I still choose you." She looked at me for a long moment, then leaned into my chest. We stood there like that, quiet and still, until her breathing slowed. The next day I did something I hadn't planned. I invited her to my job site. She showed up in jeans and a flannel, unsure at first. I introduced her without hesitation. "This is Rosa, my girlfriend." The crew welcomed her easily, jokes, handshakes, no judgment. I watched her relax as I showed her what I did, how I built things piece by piece. Later that week, I did something more personal. She'd mentioned once how her balcony used to be her favorite place, how it had fallen apart after her husband died. While she was on shift, I went over with my tools. I tightened the railing, sanded the wood, freshened it up. I added a small flower and left a note. "For the nights you forget dinner." Quote. She called me that evening, her voice breaking. "Brian, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," I said. "You deserve peace." When I arrived, she pulled me into a long hug, holding on like she was afraid to let go. On that balcony, under the city lights, she finally cried. Not from pain alone, but release. "I'm scared," she whispered. "What if I lose you too?" Quote. I held her close. "I'm here. And I'm not leaving." She kissed me then, soft at first, then deeper, honest, and full of emotion. From that night on, something shifted. She let herself lean into us. Laugh louder. Talk freely. Trust again. But even as things grew warmer, I could feel it. The world outside was still watching. And soon, it would test us in ways neither of us expected. A few months passed, and somehow we settled into something that felt real. Not rushed. Not forced. Just steady. Rosa and I spent more time together than apart. Quiet nights on her couch. Sunday mornings with coffee on the balcony I'd fixed up. Even Whiskers claimed her place like it had always been his. For the first time since I'd known her, her apartment felt lived in again. But the outside world didn't forget us. Rosa came home one evening quieter than usual. She set her keys down slowly and sat beside me, her shoulders tense. "Someone at the station made a comment today," she said. "Called you my boy toy." I felt anger rise, but I kept my voice calm. And I laughed it off, she said, but it stayed with me. She looked at me then, really looked at me. "I don't want this hurting you, your business, your future." I took her hands. "Rosa, I'm not a kid being dragged into something. I'm here because I choose to be." She nodded, tears forming. "I just don't want fear to be the reason we lose this." So I decided to stop letting fear have a voice. I invited her to another job site, this time during lunch when the crew was gathered. When she arrived, I didn't hesitate. "This is Rosa," I said proudly. "The woman I'm with." No whispers, no stares, just smiles and jokes. I watched relief wash over her face, and in that moment, I knew I was doing the right thing. That night, we sat on her balcony, the city glowing below us. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her old wedding ring. She held it in her palm for a long time. "I'll never forget him," she said softly, "but I don't want to live in the past anymore." She walked to the railing and dropped the ring into the darkness below. Then she turned back to me, free and trembling. "Thank you for staying," she whispered. Weeks later, we took a short trip to the coast, wind in our hair, waves crashing. She laughed in a way that felt brand new. On the drive back, her hand rested on my leg, comfortable and sure. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. We still had hard days. Long shifts, stress, doubts that crept in late at night. But we faced them together. One evening, as we sat on that same balcony, coffee in hand, she leaned into me and smiled. "You know," she said, "this all started because you got stopped for walking home." I laughed. Best mistake I ever made. She kissed me gently. "Mine too." And that's when it hit me. I hadn't saved her. She hadn't fixed me. We just found each other at the right moment. Sometimes love doesn't come quietly. Sometimes it pulls you over, asks for your number, and changes your life forever.